You didn't change anything. Same store you've been going to for 3 years. Same parking spot. Same cart with the wobbly wheel that you always grab by accident. You walked through the same aisles, grabbed the same cereal, the same chicken, the same brand of pasta sauce you've been buying since college. And when you got to the register, the total was wrong. Not wrong like you miscounted. Wrong like you stood there staring at the screen doing math in your head, trying to figure out where an extra 60, 70, maybe $80 went. You looked at the cashier.
Okay, go ahead.
She didn't look surprised.
You're all set.
You looked at the people behind you in line. Nobody looked surprised. And that's when it hit you. This isn't a one-time thing. This isn't a bad week. Something actually changed. And nobody sent you a memo. My name is Astrid, and I spend a lot of time thinking about money, specifically about the invisible systems that quietly move it out of your pocket and into someone else's. If you've been feeling like your paycheck is doing less than it used to, like the numbers just stopped adding up the way they should, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because what I'm about to show you is one of the most important things you'll watch this year. Because here's what nobody is telling you clearly: your grocery bill didn't go up because of inflation. Not this time. It went up because of something completely different. Something you never voted for. Something most people don't even know exists. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what happened, exactly who is responsible, and exactly what it's going to cost you over the next 12 months. Let's start with what most people think is happening. When prices go up, the instinct is to blame inflation. And for the last few years, that made sense. After the pandemic, supply chains broke down, demand spiked, and prices jumped on almost everything. That was inflation. Your dollar bought less because the whole economy was overheated. But here's the thing. Inflation has been cooling down. It's not gone, but by early 2026, it was trending in the right direction. Economists were cautiously optimistic. The Federal Reserve had cut rates 3 times. The narrative was, we got through the worst of it. So why does it still feel like everything is getting more expensive? Because it is. Just for a completely different reason now. What you're feeling at the checkout line isn't inflation. It's tariffs. And unless you've been closely following trade policy, which, let's be honest, most people have better things to do, you probably have no idea how deep this goes. Here's the simple version. A tariff is a tax on imported goods. When the United States puts a tariff on products coming in from another country, the companies importing those products have to pay that tax. And here's the part that will make you want to throw something. They don't absorb that cost. They pass it directly to you. So when a 25% tariff goes on imported goods, you don't pay 25% more. Not exactly, but you pay more. Significantly more. Quietly more. In ways that are almost impossible to trace back to the source unless someone sits down and does the math. I sat down and did the math. Here's where this gets genuinely uncomfortable. The Yale Budget Lab, one of the most respected economic research institutions in the country, ran the numbers on what the current tariff regime is actually costing American households. Not what politicians say it costs. Not what the news headlines say. What the actual data shows. The result: the average American household is paying between $650 and $1,300 more per year because of tariffs. Let that land for a second. That's not a projection. That's not a worst-case scenario. That's what is already happening. Right now. To you. $1,300 a year breaks down to roughly $108 extra every single month, leaving your wallet for no reason other than a trade policy decision that you had no say in. That's a car payment. That's 3 months of a gym membership. That's the streaming service you canceled because you said you were trying to cut back. And here's what makes this particularly insidious. It doesn't show up as a line item. There's no receipt that says tariff charge, $12.47. It's baked into the price of the product. It looks like the brand just decided to charge more. It looks like the store raised its prices. It looks like inflation. But it isn't. It's a tax, hidden inside the price tag of things you buy every week. Now let's talk about what specific products are affected, because this is where most people are shocked. They hear tariffs on imports, and they think about televisions, electronics, big-ticket stuff they don't buy that often. But that's not what's hitting your monthly budget. What's hitting your budget is food. Tariffs have pushed up the cost of cooking oils, canned goods, fresh produce from Mexico and Canada, seafood, coffee, chocolate, and hundreds of packaged food products that rely on imported ingredients or imported packaging. JP Morgan released an analysis in early 2026 warning that 80% of tariff costs that businesses were absorbing in 2025 are now being passed directly to consumers in 2026. 80%. Which means the companies that were quietly eating the cost for the past year have reached their limit. They're done absorbing it. And now, starting in 2026, the full weight of that cost is shifting to you. Think about what that means practically. The food companies didn't suddenly decide to be greedy. They held the price as long as they could. And then they couldn't anymore. So they raised it. And your grocery bill went up. And you stood at the register thinking you miscounted. You didn't miscount. The system changed, and nobody told you. Here's the part of this story that most people completely miss, and it changes everything about how you should be thinking about your money right now. The conversation around tariffs is almost always framed as a political debate. Are they good or bad for the country? Do they protect American jobs? Are they a negotiating tool or a mistake? And people split along political lines and argue about it, and nothing gets resolved. But that framing is completely wrong for what this video is actually about. Because for your personal finances, for your budget, your savings, your ability to build any kind of financial stability, it doesn't matter which side of the political argument you're on. The tariff is not ideological when it hits your bank account. It's mathematical. It just costs you money. Full stop. And here's the twist that nobody talks about. The people most hurt by tariffs are not wealthy people. The Yale Budget Lab's analysis showed that lower and middle-income households pay a dramatically higher percentage of their income in tariff-related price increases than high-income households. Why? Because wealthy people spend a smaller fraction of their income on food, household goods, and the everyday items that tariffs hit hardest. If you make $50,000 a year and tariffs cost you $1,300, that's 2.6% of your gross income gone, before taxes, before rent, before anything else. If you make $500,000 a year and tariffs cost you $1,300, it's a rounding error. This is not a rich person's problem. This is specifically, disproportionately a regular person's problem. And it compounds in a way that people haven't thought through yet. Because here's what happens when your grocery bill goes up by $60 to $80 every month and you're not getting a raise to compensate. You start making cuts somewhere else. Maybe you stop putting as much in savings. Maybe you run a higher balance on your credit card. Maybe you skip the dentist or the car maintenance that you've been putting off anyway. And each one of those cuts creates a downstream consequence. The savings you don't put away today is not there for the emergency 6 months from now. The credit card balance you run up comes with 23% interest. The car maintenance you skip turns into a $2,000 repair. The tariff that cost you $80 at the grocery store ends up costing you $800 somewhere down the road. This is how people fall behind financially, and they have absolutely no idea why. They're working just as hard as they were 2 years ago. They're not spending on anything crazy. They're doing everything right. And the numbers just won't cooperate. Now I want to tell you about the piece of this that is genuinely alarming, the part of the tariff story that hasn't fully hit yet. In April 2026, new 100% tariffs were announced on pharmaceuticals. 100%. Do you know what that did to the stock market? It triggered the worst single-day drop since the COVID crash of 2020. And prescription drug prices for medications that millions of Americans take every day are going to increase in ways we haven't seen since the financial crisis. This isn't the grocery aisle anymore. This is the pharmacy. This is people choosing between their blood pressure medication and their electric bill. And it is coming. The grocery bill was just the first signal. The signal that something had changed. The warm-up. What's coming next in the pharmaceutical tariffs is a different level of financial pressure entirely. So, what do you actually do with all of this? First, understand that this is not your fault. The feeling you've been having that your money isn't going as far as it should, that you're doing everything right and still falling behind, is not a personal failure. It is a systemic reality that is hitting every household in the country at the same time. Knowing that doesn't fix the grocery bill. But it does mean you can stop blaming yourself and start making strategic decisions. Second, adjust your budget with accurate numbers, not last year's numbers. Here's something very practical. If you're budgeting based on what you spent on groceries in 2024, you're already wrong. Your food budget needs to go up by at least 15 to 20% in 2026 just to cover the same items. If you haven't updated those numbers, you have a silent leak in your budget that you will never be able to trace because it looks like 100 small, unexplained overages instead of one obvious problem. Update the number. Make it real. A budget that's built on 2024 prices is a fantasy budget, and it will make you feel like you're constantly failing when you're actually just working with bad data. Third, look at what tariffs are hitting hardest and think about substitutions. Imported cooking oils have been hit heavily. Look at domestic alternatives. Fresh produce from Canada and Mexico carries significant tariff exposure. Shifting toward domestic seasonal produce where possible will reduce your exposure. This isn't about couponing or extreme frugality. It's about understanding which products have the highest tariff markup baked in and making small strategic swaps that add up over 12 months. Fourth, and this is the one most people will skip, but it's the most important. Build your emergency fund faster than you plan to. Because the pharmaceutical tariffs are coming. Because JP Morgan's warning about businesses passing 80% of costs to consumers is already happening. Because the economic uncertainty created by trade policy right now, Goldman Sachs has recession probability at 30%, and several economists have it higher. Means that job market disruptions are a real possibility in the next 12 to 18 months. The best protection against a system that is quietly taking money from your household is a buffer large enough that you can absorb shocks without going into debt. 3 months of expenses minimum. 6 if you can get there. I know that feels impossible when your grocery bill just went up $80 a month. But that's exactly the trap. The financial pressure created by tariffs makes it harder to save at exactly the moment when it's most important to save. That's the cruelest part of this whole thing. The system makes it harder to build the protection you need against the system. So you do it anyway. You do it smaller if you have to. $50 a month instead of $200. But you do not stop. Here's the thing that I keep coming back to after going through all of this data. The $60 that disappeared from your grocery run wasn't random. It wasn't inflation. It wasn't the store getting greedy. It was a policy decision made by people who will never personally feel the difference between a $200 grocery run and a $270 one. They have people who handle that for them. You don't have people who handle it for you. Which means understanding exactly what's happening down to the mechanism, down to the math, down to the specific products, is one of the most financially protective things you can do right now. Because you can't make good decisions with bad information. And for the past several months, most people have had very bad information about why their money keeps disappearing. Now you have the real picture. What you do with it is up to you. If this video helped you understand something that's been confusing or frustrating for a while, please share it with one person who needs to hear it. Not because it will fix anything, but because financial clarity is genuinely one of the most useful things you can give someone right now. And if you want to go deeper on any of this, the recession risk, the pharmaceutical tariffs, the housing math, the credit card trap, all of that is coming. Subscribe and you won't miss it. I'll see you in the next one.